The rain hit the window like it was trying to get in, and Eli Navarro stood frozen in the doorway of his own apartment, watching the one person he never expected to see again shake water from his hair like nothing had changed between them. "You're soaked," Eli said, because it was the only sentence his brain could produce. "You're staring," Kai Bennett said back, and there it was, that half-smile, the one that used to live in Eli's chest rent-free for 2 years before Kai packed a bag and left without saying why. "Can I come in, or are we doing this in the hallway?" Eli didn't move. Not because he didn't want Kai inside, God, he wanted that more than he was ready to admit, but because some part of him knew that the second Kai crossed that threshold, everything he'd spent 8 months rebuilding was going to come undone in about 30 seconds. He stepped aside anyway. Kai walked in, dripping onto the hardwood, and when he turned around to face Eli fully, really look at him, the way he used to before things got complicated, Eli felt his pulse do something reckless. Kai's jacket was soaked through. His curls stuck to his forehead. And his eyes, still that impossible shade of gray-green, were doing the thing they always did, searching Eli's face like there was an answer written there that only Kai could read. "I shouldn't have come here," Kai said quietly. "Then why did you?" Kai didn't answer with words. He crossed the space between them, 3 steps, maybe 4, and before Eli could brace himself, before he could remind his own heart of every reason this was a terrible idea, Kai's arms were around him. Tight. Certain. Like he'd rehearsed this moment 100 times on the drive over. Eli stood there for 1 full second, stunned, rain-cold fabric pressed against his shirt, Kai's breath unsteady against his neck, and then he hugged him back like he'd been waiting 8 months to exhale. "I miss you," Kai whispered. "I know I don't get to say that. But I missed you so much it scared me." Either of them let go. Not for a long time. What happened next changed everything they thought they knew about each other, and about themselves. But to understand how 2 best friends ended up like this, soaked and breathless in a doorway, we have to go back. Back to the summer it all began. 14 months earlier, Eli Navarro's life looked nothing like this. He was 23, living in a cramped 1-bedroom above a laundromat in a mid-sized coastal town called Wren's Harbor, working mornings at a bookstore that smelled like old paper and sea salt, and spending most of his evenings alone with a sketchbook he never showed anyone. He liked his life quiet. Predictable. Safe. He did not expect Kai Bennett to walk into that bookstore on a Tuesday afternoon in June, holding a box of his late grandmother's poetry books, asking if the shop bought used collections. "Depends on the condition," Eli had said, not looking up from the register. "They're in rough shape," Kai admitted. She read them 1,000 times. Cracked spines, coffee stains, her handwriting in the margins. Basically ruined, if you're going by resale value. Something in the way he said it, soft, a little wounded, trying to make a joke out of grief, made Eli finally look up. And that was it. That was the whole beginning. One look, across a counter stacked with doggered paperbacks, and Eli's carefully quiet life quietly stopped being quiet. "Those aren't ruined," Eli said. "Those are the only copies worth anything. A book somebody actually loved is worth more than one nobody's touched." Kai's face did something complicated, surprise, then something warmer. "That's a good line. You should write that down. I'm a bookseller, not a poet. Could have fooled me." They talked for 40 minutes after Eli's shift technically ended. About Kai's grandmother, who'd raised him after his parents split when he was 9. About the marketing job Kai had just taken at a firm 2 blocks away, the one he wasn't sure he wanted. About nothing in particular, and everything that mattered, the way conversations go when 2 people recognize something in each other they can't yet name. By the time Kai left, without selling a single book, because Eli had talked him out of it, Eli already knew he was going to think about him for the rest of the week. He was right. He thought about him for the rest of the year. They became inseparable in a way that surprised everyone except themselves. Coffee before Kai's shift. Long walks along the harbor after Eli closed the shop. Movie nights that turned into falling asleep on opposite ends of the same couch, blankets tangled, some late-night comedy playing to no one. Their friends, the small overlapping circle they built together, People like Priya from Kai's office and Dev, Eli's downstairs neighbor with the ancient motorcycle, used to joke that they were an old married couple who'd forgotten to get married. Eli always laughed it off. Kai always laughed a half-second too late, like the joke landed somewhere it wasn't supposed to. Neither of them said anything. Not when Kai's hand brushed Eli's on the walk home, and neither of them moved away. Not when Eli caught himself staring at the curve of Kai's jaw during a quiet dinner and had to look down at his plate, heart hammering, before Kai noticed. Not when Kai showed up at Eli's door at 11 at night after a bad breakup with someone Eli had never even met, a woman named Sarah he'd dated for 3 unremarkable months, and said, "I don't know why I came here instead of anywhere else," and Eli had said, "I do," and then immediately panicked and changed the subject. They were best friends. That was the label they both clung to, even as the label started fraying at the edges. It took an entire year, and one night neither of them planned, for the truth to finally surface. It was late September, the air just starting to turn, when Kai suggested they walk out to the end of the old fishing pier after Eli's closing shift. The tourists had thinned out for the season. The town felt like it belonged only to them. "I have to tell you something," Kai said, once they reached the railing at the far end, the water black and glittering below the lights. Eli's stomach dropped in a way he didn't fully understand yet. "Okay. I've been trying to figure out how to say this for months." Kai's hands gripped the railing. He wasn't looking at Eli. He was looking at the water, like it was easier to talk to the ocean than to the person standing next to him. "And every time I get close, I lose my nerve, because I don't want to lose you. You're the best thing in my life right now, Eli, and if I say this wrong, I'm scared it ruins everything." "You could never ruin anything," Eli said, quiet, honest. Kai finally turned to look at him. In the low light, his eyes looked almost silver. "I don't think I feel about you the way friends are supposed to feel about each other. I've tried to talk myself out of it. I dated Sarah because I thought if I liked someone else enough, this feeling would just go away. It didn't. It got worse. Every time you smile at me like that, it gets worse." The world narrowed down to the sound of the waves and the thud of Eli's own heartbeat. "Kai. You don't have to say anything back," Kai said quickly, panic creeping into his voice. "I just needed you to know. I needed to stop lying to you by not saying it." Eli reached out and put a hand over Kai's on the railing, the first time he let himself touch him with intention instead of accident. Kai went completely still. "I've been in love with you since the day you brought your grandmother's books into the shop," Eli said. "I just didn't have the guts to say it first." For a moment neither of them breathed. Then Kai laughed, a startled, disbelieving sound, half a sob, and closed the distance between them, and for the first time, they kissed. Slow. Careful. Like they were both terrified the other might disappear if they moved too fast. The pier lights swayed gently above them, the ocean loud and endless at their backs, and for the length of that kiss, nothing else in either of their lives existed. When they finally broke apart, foreheads still touching, Kai whispered, "I've wanted to do that for so long I forgot what it felt like to not want to." "Then don't stop wanting it," Eli said. They didn't, for a long time after that. The months that followed were, in Eli's private opinion, the best of his life. They didn't rush into labels or big declarations to their families right away. That would come later, each in their own time, each with their own complicated conversations that mattered too much to be rushed onto a page. What mattered first was smaller, quieter, and somehow bigger than anything either of them had felt before. The way Kai started leaving his spare key with Eli just in case. The way Eli began stocking the coffee Kai liked even though he didn't drink it himself. The way they learned each other's silences well enough to know which ones meant leave me alone and which meant please stay. Dev, ever blunt, cornered Eli outside his apartment one evening with a grin. "So you and Kai, huh? Took you both long enough. I had a bet running with Priya since August." "You had a bet?" $50. "I lost, for the record," I said October. Dev shrugged. "Worth it though. You're less broody now." "It's a good look." Eli didn't know how to explain that he didn't feel less broody. He felt unlocked, like a room in his own chest had been sealed shut for years and Kai had simply found the door. But love, even the good kind, rarely stays uncomplicated for long. And 2 months into what Eli privately thought of as the happiest chapter of his life, a phone call came that would test every quiet promise they'd made to each other on that pier. It came from 300 miles away, from a company Kai had applied to almost as a joke, back before Eli existed in his life at all, a job he'd forgotten he even wanted. They offered him the position on a Thursday. He didn't tell Eli until Sunday. Sunday night, Eli was stirring pasta on the stove, humming something off-key, when Kai finally said it. "I got a job offer." Eli turned the burner down and looked over his shoulder. Kai was sitting at the small kitchen table, spinning his phone in slow circles, not quite meeting Eli's eyes. "That's amazing." "Where?" "Portfield Creative. It's a bigger firm. Way bigger than where I'm at now." Kai's voice had a strange flatness to it, like he was reading off a script he hadn't finished writing. "Director level. Real title, real salary, real, everything I said I wanted before I moved here." "Kai, that's huge." Eli crossed the kitchen and put a hand on his shoulder, genuinely thrilled for half a second before the geography of it caught up with him. "Wait. Portfield's that's not local, is it?" Silence. "It's 300 miles away," Kai said quietly. They called Thursday. The pasta water started to boil over behind them. Neither of them moved to turn it off. "Thursday," Eli repeated. "It's Sunday, Kai." "I know. You've had this for 3 days and you're telling me now." Kai finally looked up, and Eli could see it then, not indifference, but fear, the kind that makes people delay bad news until it curdles into something worse. "I didn't know how to bring it up. Every time I tried, I pictured your face doing exactly what it's doing right now, and I couldn't make myself say the words. So instead you just sat on it. For 3 days. While I made you coffee and asked about your week like everything was normal. I'm sorry." Eli turned the stove off, the pasta forgotten, foam sliding down the side of the pot in a way either of them cared about anymore. "Are you taking it?" "I don't know." "That's not a no." "It's not a yes either," Kai said, voice rising now, something raw breaking through the careful flatness. "Eli, I've wanted a job like this since I was 20. Before I knew this town existed. Before I knew you existed. It's everything I used to dream about, and now it's sitting in my inbox and I don't know what to do with it because the person I love most in the world is standing 3 feet away from me and I don't know how to want both things at once." The word love landed between them like something dropped from a great height. Neither of them had said it out loud before. Not on the pier. Not in the 2 months since. And now it arrived, of all times, wrapped inside an argument neither of them wanted to be having. Eli sat down slowly across from him. "Say that again." "Which part?" "You know which part." Kai's jaw tightened, emotion warring visibly across his face. "I love you. I've loved you probably since the bookstore, if I'm honest, and I hate that the first time I'm saying it out loud, it's tangled up in something this messy." "I love you too," Eli said, quieter now, the anger draining into something closer to grief. "Which is exactly why this is going to be so hard." They didn't fight again after that, not loudly, not with raised voices. What came instead was worse, a slow, creeping distance either of them named directly. Kai didn't accept the job right away. He also didn't decline it. He let it sit, unanswered, for 11 days, and during those 11 days something in the apartment above the laundromat shifted. Conversations that used to run late into the night clipped short. Kai started staying at his own place more, citing packing he wasn't sure he'd need to do, boxes he wasn't sure he'd fill. Eli, for his part, did the thing he always did when he was scared. He went quiet. Instead of asking the questions crowding his chest, "Are you leaving? Do you want me to ask you to stay? Would that even be fair?" He buried himself in the bookstore, took extra shifts, filled his sketchbook with restless, unfinished drawings of a coastline he used to draw from memory without thinking twice. Priya noticed first. She caught Eli alone in the shop on a slow Tuesday, the bell over the door barely finished ringing before she got straight to it. You look like a man who hasn't slept. I'm fine. Kai looks worse, if it helps. Eli's hand stilled on the register. Does it? Not really, no. Priya leaned against the counter, arms crossed, not unkind but not about to let him off easy either. He told me about Portfield. He also told me he hasn't really talked to you about it since that first night. Is that true? We talk. About the job? Eli didn't answer, which was answer enough. Eli. Priya's voice softened. I've known Kai 2 years. I've never seen him this torn up about anything, not the breakup with Sarah, not his grandmother's funeral, nothing. He's not torn up because he doesn't want the job. He's torn up because he's terrified that no matter what he chooses, he loses something he can't get back. So what am I supposed to do? Beg him to stay? Tell him not to take the best opportunity of his career because I'll miss him? No, Priya said. But you could tell him what you actually want. Because right now, from where I'm standing, you're both just quietly disappearing from each other, and neither of you is saying a single true thing out loud. 2 nights later, Kai showed up at the apartment unannounced, the way he used to before all of this, keys jingling in his hand like a habit he couldn't quite let go of even now. I turned it down, he said, standing in the doorway. Eli's chest did something complicated. Relief tangled with disbelief tangled with something that felt uncomfortably close to guilt. What? Portfield. I called them this afternoon. I turned it down. Kai. Don't, Kai said, holding up a hand though his voice shook. Don't tell me it's a mistake. I've spent 11 days going back and forth in my own head like a coward, and the second I actually pictured saying yes, pictured what my life looks like 300 miles from you, I knew. I'd rather have this. I'd rather have you. He crossed the room the way he had on the pier, slow but certain, and stopped close enough that Eli could feel the warmth radiating off him, could see the small tremor in his hands that gave away just how much this cost him to say. Kai, I need you to be sure, Eli said, even as his own body leaned in without permission, even as his eyes dropped to Kai's mouth and stayed there a beat too long. I don't want to be the reason you give up something you've wanted your whole life. I couldn't live with that. You're not the reason I'm giving anything up, Kai murmured, close enough now that his breath ghosted against Eli's jaw. You're the reason any of it matters in the first place. Their faces were inches apart. Eli's hand found the front of Kai's shirt, not pulling him closer, not pushing him away, just holding on, like an anchor. The air between them felt charged, breakable, the kind of moment that exists right before everything changes. And then Eli's phone rang, loud and jarring, on the counter behind them. Both of them froze. The spell, fragile, hard one, cracked down the middle. Eli let out a shaky breath, forehead dropping briefly against Kai's shoulder. I should probably get that. Probably, Kai agreed, not moving away, one hand still resting warm against Eli's waist. Or you could let it ring. For one more second, either of them chose. The phone kept ringing. Neither of them looked away from the other. What Eli didn't know yet was that the call wasn't random, and answering it would set off a chain of events neither of them saw coming. A misunderstanding was about to walk straight into the middle of the best moment they'd had in weeks. Eli answered it. He'd never fully forgive himself for that later, not because of what happened, but because of how ordinary the decision felt in the moment, how little he understood what it would cost them. Hello? Eli? Oh my God, it's been forever. The voice was warm, familiar in a distant sort of way, threaded with an easy laugh Eli hadn't heard in almost 2 years. It's Marcus. Marcus Vale. I know, random. I got your number from your sister. Marcus Vale. Eli's first real boyfriend back in college, before Wren's Harbor, before the bookstore, before any of this. 2 years of history that had ended amicably enough, no dramatic breakup, just 2 people drifting into different cities and different lives. Kai, close enough to hear the tinny sound of a stranger's voice through the phone, went very still. Marcus, hey, yeah, it has been a while, Eli said, stepping back half a pace out of pure instinct, though he couldn't have said from what. What's going on? I'm actually going to be in Wren's Harbor next week for a work thing. Thought it'd be criminal not to grab a drink, catch up. You still there? Yeah. Yeah, I'm still here. Great. I'll text you the details. Seriously, it'll be good to see your face again. The call ended. Eli lowered the phone slowly, already feeling the shift in the room before he even turned around. Kai's expression had closed off completely, not angry exactly, but guarded in a way Eli hadn't seen since the earliest days of their friendship, before either of them had let their guard down at all. Who was that? Kai asked, voice carefully even. An old friend. From college. Just a friend. Kai. You said his name like you knew him well? Kai's arms crossed over his chest, a defensive posture Eli recognized instantly and hated instantly. Grabbing a drink. Catching up. That's fine, obviously you can see whoever you want. Kai, stop. Eli set the phone down, frustration and something gentler tangled together in his voice. Marcus was my boyfriend in college. 2 years, ended fine, no drama. We haven't spoken in almost 2 years and he's coming through town for work. That's it. That's the whole story. Okay, Kai said in a tone that made it clear it was not, in fact, okay. You just told me an hour ago you turned down the best job of your career for me, Eli said, disbelief creeping into his voice now. And you're jealous of a 5-minute phone call? I'm not jealous. You are absolutely jealous. Kai's jaw worked silently for a moment, some internal war playing out behind his eyes, before he finally exhaled, frustrated, mostly, Eli suspected, with himself. Maybe I am okay? Maybe the idea of you sitting across a table from someone who got to have you first, who probably has 100 memories with you that I'll never be part of, maybe that does something ugly in my chest that I'm not proud of. Kai. Eli stepped closer, softer now, understanding dawning. You just gave up a job in a different city because you didn't want to lose this. Do you really think one drink with someone from 6 years ago is going to undo that? I don't know, Kai admitted quieter. I've never done this before, the whole being with someone and actually wanting to keep them thing. I don't know how to be sure of something without also being terrified of losing it. Eli reached up and cupped Kai's jaw gently, thumb brushing along his cheekbone, waiting until Kai's guarded eyes finally met his. You're not going to lose me over a cup of coffee with someone from my past. You'd have to actually try to lose me. And even then, I don't think you could. Something in Kai's shoulders finally eased. I'm sorry. That was not my finest moment. No, Eli agreed, a small smile tugging at his mouth. It really wasn't. But it's kind of nice, knowing you care enough to be an idiot about it. Kai laughed, a real one this time, tension breaking, and rested his forehead against Eli's. The moment from before the phone rang, fragile and interrupted, tried quietly to rebuild itself between them. It almost worked. In the days that followed, things between them seemed, on the surface, to smooth back over. Kai came by most evenings. Eli kept his coffee order stocked. They fell back into their old rhythms, movie nights, walks along the harbor, the easy quiet of two people who knew each other completely. But something had shifted, subtle and persistent, like a splinter neither of them had fully removed. Kai found himself watching Eli's phone a little too closely when it lit up. Eli found himself hesitating before mentioning Marcus's name again, even in passing, even when it would have been the natural, honest thing to do. Neither of them talked about it directly. They'd said sorry, they'd hugged it out, and yet the small, unspoken caution lingered underneath everything like a current neither of them wanted to name. It was Dev, of all people, who put it into words one evening on the apartment stairwell, catching Eli on his way up with a bag of groceries. You and Kai good? He asked, leaning against the railing. We're fine. You keep saying that like it's a fact instead of a hope. Dev shrugged, not unkindly. For what it's worth, from the outside, you two look like a couple that's had one fight too quiet to actually resolve anything. Might want to fix that before it turns into 2 fights. Eli didn't have a good answer for that. Mostly because Dev wasn't wrong. The night of Marcus's visit arrived before either of them had really talked it through. Eli mentioned it that morning, almost as an afterthought over coffee, Marcus texted, "We're doing drinks tonight around 7, at the place by the pier," and watched Kai's face do a complicated thing before smoothing back into practiced neutrality. "Have fun," Kai said. "You could come," Eli offered, half testing, half sincere. "Meet him. Might make this whole thing feel less like a big deal if you're actually there." "I've got some things to catch up on tonight," Kai said. "Work stuff." It was, Eli would later realize, the first real lie either of them had told the other since the night on the pier. Marcus Vale looked mostly the same, a little more polished, a little more settled into himself, but the same easy warmth Eli remembered, the kind that made conversation feel effortless even after years apart. They talked for an hour about nothing important: old mutual friends, Marcus's job, the strange comfort of catching up with someone who'd known an earlier, less certain version of you. "You seem different," Marcus said eventually, studying Eli over his glass. "Lighter. Happier, maybe? There's someone?" Eli felt himself smile before he'd even decided to. "Yeah. There's someone." "Good," Marcus said, and meant it, no trace of old jealousy in his voice. "You deserve that. You always were better at loving people than you were at believing you deserved it back." It was a kind thing to say, an old friend kind of honesty, and Eli laughed, and thanked him and meant it. He didn't notice, across the bar, near the far window, a familiar figure standing just inside the doorway, coat still on, having changed his mind about staying home after all, having decided at the last minute that maybe showing up mattered more than pride, freeze at the sight of Eli laughing, easy and warm, across the table from someone else. Kai didn't come over. He didn't say a word. He watched for a handful of seconds, chest tightening around a feeling he couldn't fully name, and then he turned and walked back out into the cold, phone already buzzing unread in his pocket, a message from Eli he wouldn't open until much later that night. By the time Eli got home, Kai was gone, not just from the apartment, but from every message he sent for the next 3 days. What Kai saw in that bar wasn't the truth. But the silence that followed would nearly cost them everything they'd built. The first day, Eli told himself Kai was just busy. The second day, he told himself it was a misunderstanding that would sort itself out the moment they actually talked. By the third day, sitting alone in an apartment that suddenly felt too quiet, staring at a phone that hadn't lit up with Kai's name since the night of the bar, Eli stopped telling himself anything. He just felt it, the specific, hollow ache of loving someone who'd gone silent without explanation. He'd sent messages. Simple ones at first, "Hey, you okay?" Then more honest ones as the silence stretched. "I don't know what happened. Please just talk to me." Each one sat there, delivered unread, a small monument to how quickly good things could unravel. It was Priya, again, who finally broke the standoff, not through Eli this time, but through Kai, cornering him at the office on the third afternoon with the same blunt honesty she'd used before. "You've been miserable for 3 days," she said, sliding into the chair across from his desk. "And Eli's been texting me, which he never does, asking if you're okay. So somebody's going to explain to me what happened, and it might as well be you." Kai stared at his monitor without seeing it. "I saw him at the bar. With Marcus. Laughing. Looking happier than I'd seen him look in days, and I panicked. I left before either of them saw me." "So you didn't talk to him?" "No." "You didn't ask him what was going on?" "No." "You just decided, based on one laugh across a crowded bar, that the guy who turned down his dream job for you 3 weeks ago was suddenly done with you?" Priya's eyebrows rose slowly. "Kai. That's not caution. That's fear dressed up as certainty." Kai finally looked at her, something cracking behind his composure. "What if I'm not enough to keep? What if I'm always going to be the guy standing outside the window, waiting for the moment someone realizes there's something better on the other side of the glass?" "Then you'll never know unless you walk back through the door and ask," Priya said, gently now. "You don't get to decide Eli's answer for him by disappearing before he even gets to give it." That evening, the sky opened up into the kind of sudden, heavy rain Wren's harbor got every autumn, the kind that soaked through jackets in under a minute and sent everyone scrambling for cover. Kai stood outside Eli's building for a long moment before he made himself climb the stairs, rehearsing and abandoning a dozen different opening lines with every step. This is the moment the story began with. The knock, the doorway, the rain-soaked reunion neither of them saw coming quite this way. But now, standing in it fully, the weight of everything unsaid hung between them far heavier than either had let on. "You're soaked," Eli had said. "You're staring," Kai had answered. And then the hug, desperate, wordless, 3 days of silence collapsing into a single held breath. But a hug wasn't an explanation. Once they finally broke apart, dripping and breathless in the doorway, Eli stepped back just far enough to look at him properly. "Where have you been?" he asked, voice raw. 3 days, Kai. I didn't know if you were okay. I didn't know if we were okay. I saw you, Kai said. At the bar. With Marcus. You were laughing, and you looked so easy and happy, and I couldn't make myself walk over. I convinced myself I already knew what it meant. You left. Without saying a word. For 3 days. Eli's voice cracked, more hurt than angry now. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I thought I'd lost you, Kai. I thought turning down that job hadn't been enough, that I'd somehow already failed at the one thing I promised myself I wouldn't, making you feel like you had to choose between something safe and something that scared you. I know, and I'm sorry. I panicked, and panic made me stupid, and I let 3 days go by because some part of me would rather disappear quietly than risk hearing you say I was right to be scared. Marcus asked if there was someone, Eli said quietly. I told him yes. I told him about you, about how you make ordinary Tuesdays feel like something worth remembering, about how I've never in my life felt as certain of anything as I feel about you. That's what you missed by walking out that door instead of walking over to our table. Kai's composure finally broke completely, something raw and unguarded taking over his face. I keep waiting for the moment this all falls apart. For the moment you realize you could have someone easier than me, someone who doesn't come with 3 days of silent panic every time he gets scared. I don't want easier, Eli said, closing the distance between them again, hands finding Kai's face, holding it like something precious. I want you. Panic and all. I fell in love with a person, not a performance of someone who never struggles. You don't have to be perfect for me to choose you every single day. You just have to stop running when things get hard. I don't want to run anymore, Kai whispered. I'm done running. From you, from this, from how much I feel every time I'm in the same room as you. Then stay, Eli said. Not just tonight. All of it. The good days and the bad ones. The version of you that turns down dream jobs and the version that panics over nothing. I want all of it. Kai's hands came up to cover Eli's, holding them against his own face like an anchor. I love you. I should have said it the second I saw you at that bar instead of running. I love you, and I'm done letting fear make my choices for me. This time, when they kissed, there was no hesitation, no fragile uncertainty waiting to be interrupted. It was slow and full and certain, rain still dripping from Kai's jacket onto the floor neither of them cared about, 3 days of silence dissolving into something that finally, fully, made sense. Months later, the story of that rainy doorway became something they told often, to Priya and Dev over dinner, to Kai's mother the first time Eli met her, to anyone who asked how two best friends became something neither of them had words for until they finally stopped being afraid to say it. Kai never did take the Portfield job, though the firm called twice more before giving up. He didn't regret it, not once, not even on the hardest days, because what he'd chosen instead was a life built slowly and honestly with someone who made ordinary Tuesdays feel like the beginning of something worth staying for. They still argued sometimes. They still had moments of old insecurity creeping back in. Kai occasionally still watched Eli's phone light up a beat too long, and Eli occasionally still hesitated before mentioning names from his past, old habits taking time to fully unlearn. But they talked now. Always. No more silences that stretched into days, no more assumptions dressed up as certainty. 1 year after the night on the pier, Kai took Eli back to that same railing, the same black water glittering beneath the same string of lights, and reminded him of every word said that night, the confession, the fear, the kiss either of them had been ready for and both of them had needed. I used to think love was supposed to feel safe, Kai said, turning to face him. But it's not, is it? It's terrifying. It's choosing someone every single day even when you're scared, even when it would be easier not to. It's also the best terrifying thing that's ever happened to me, Eli said, smiling, reaching for his hand the way he had that very first night. I'd choose this kind of scared over anything safe. Every time. Kai laughed, pulling him close, the ocean loud and endless behind them just like before. Good. Because I'm not planning on giving you a choice. They stood there a long time, two people who'd once been just best friends, now something neither of them needed to name carefully anymore, because it was simply, fully, theirs. Was one unexpected hug really the moment everything changed for Eli and Kai, or was it simply the moment they finally stopped being afraid to admit what had already changed months before? If this story moved you, made you feel something, or reminded you of your own story, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell us in the comments which moment hit you hardest. Was it the pier? The doorway? The 3 days of silence? And here's one more question before you go. Should I tell you what happened next? The story of the day Kai finally introduced Eli to his mother, and the conversation that almost changed everything all over again.